Welcome back to Tipping Point. I'm your host, Kara McKinney. For the crime of killing nearly 350 people in what many argue were preventable crashes, Boeing is likely to pay a fine less than the one issued to President Trump over the valuation of his Mar-a-Lago property. Trump didn't kill anyone. He paid back his loans in full with interest and on time to a bank that was scouting him as a customer in the first place. And yet, because a Democrat judge in New York unilaterally got to decide how much he personally thinks Mar-a-Lago is worth, Trump got slapped originally with a penalty exceeding $350 million. But you know what Boeing is being asked to pay for reportedly accepting to plead guilty to criminal fraud conspiracy? About $243 million. The real dollar figure is over 400, but the aerospace company could get a credit for past fines paid, bringing the new total way down. Yes, President Trump was able to reduce his penalty amount as well, but in what universe does it make sense for him to be facing the same kind of penalties as Boeing? Trump was a driving factor in them finally grounding their 737s over faulty software, which led to back-to-back fatal crashes in the years 2018 and 2019, happening in both Indonesia and Ethiopia. Boeing tried blaming the lies fed to the FAA over software and pilot training of the new faulty systems on 2 employees. Now, that allowed for the company to secure a deferred prosecution agreement with the DOJ back in 2021. But the feds have since argued that Boeing has consistently failed to craft and implement new policy to make sure that such fraud never happens again in their manufacturing. The new plea deal, which still needs approval from a judge, would empower a third-party monitor to oversee their quality and safety procedures for the next few years. And it would also require them to invest $455 million into safety compliance programs and to have their top officials meet with the families of those lost in the crashes. Even still, Paul Cassell, a lawyer for some of the victims' families, says the deal doesn't go far enough. He argues, quote, "This sweetheart deal fails to recognize that because of Boeing's conspiracy, 346 people died. Through crafty lawyering between Boeing and DOJ, the deadly consequences of Boeing's crime are being hidden," end quote. How long until he ends up like the Boeing whistleblowers? It's also worth noting here that a lot of Boeing's corner cutting on safety comes from them moving many of the facilities out of their traditional states and then replacing many senior engineers with low-paid foreign workers abroad, namely in India. That easy money is hard for top execs to ignore, but its consequences are steep. Not only do such measures result in deaths and infrastructure decay, but they're also nation-destroying. Europe provides a great example of this phenomenon, and Turning Point's Charlie Kirk sums it up well by posting today, quote, "Emmanuel Macron made a very simple decision. He would rather let literal communists ruin France than allow immigration to be restricted," end quote. An article from Red State explains what happened over the weekend in France. Quote, "After a surprise first round elevated the right-wing National Rally Party, the country's far left from Emmanuel Macron to the literal communists colluded to win the second round. That included pushing hundreds of candidates to strategically drop out of their races to ensure the left wing held enough seats to form a coalition. French voters happily played along," end quote. Here's what that looked like in the streets as elsewhere migrants rioted happily.
On vous a couché! On vous a niqué! Voilà ce qu'on dit!
Vous avez perdu, vous avez perdu. On est trop fort à gauche, on a l'amour, on a la fête, on a la joie. Vous avez la haine, on est trop fort, on est trop fort. Vous avez perdu, désolé. Et c'est des racistes. Voilà, c'est tout. Ils peuvent aller se faire enculer. C'est tout, c'est tout. Vous avez perdu. Vous avez perdu. Vous avez perdu. Voilà, gaiement. On va rester en France. Nous les boudous, nous restons ici. On reste ici. Voilà, on va rester là, les gars. Voilà.
Now in the UK, similar left-wing election gains means that criminal migrants will not be deported and that all criminals could benefit from an emergency order being mulled over by the new progressive prime minister to start cutting sentences in half. Elections do have consequences, but they begin with the economics of voter replacement.